It's time to take a ride on the Steelers Afternoon Drive with our co-hosts, Alan Saunders and Zachary Smith.
Welcome into another episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive. I'm Zachary Smith. That is Alan Saunders. Alan, how are we doing today?
Doing good. Pretty chill day, considering
That's what I was just saying. Finally a little bit of time to.
This was the first day that we got to breathe a little bit. Like the news has just not come at us like Kirk Angle parked a milk truck in our driveway and has done what he did with the fire hose to us all. There's been news. There's been stuff out there, right, that has piqued our interest, stuff that we're going to talk about. There's this discussion between the Steelers and Brandon Aiyuk, maybe. I don't know. He's obviously been on the trade market for a while now. I guess it's sort of been speculated that the Steelers could be involved in that market. What the trade looks like. There's Mel Kiper switching his pick from cornerback to wide receiver, having the Steelers go with Brian Thomas of LSU in his latest mock. I think that's interesting. And two news items that seem like they're on the same wavelength, right? And then, the Steelers bringing in Mike Williams as a free agent visit this week. They've been talking to Tyler Boyd. Jerry Dulac of the Post-Gazette speculated they could be up for an even bigger move at that position. It seems like a wide receiver. It's the NFL just Netflix announced they're not doing the quarterback documentary this year.
Yep.
Doing the receiver documentary this year. It is a receivery episode of Steelers Afternoon Drive, I feel.
Yeah, so it had kind of made its rounds yesterday that maybe there was some interest in Brandon Aiyuk. And so I want to share something on the screen, Alan, because I put these two side by side together, Mike Tomlin and Brandon Aiyuk, and this is what you get side by side. Mike Tomlin, Brandon Aiyuk. It's basically Mike Tomlin with dreads, a younger version of him. And actually, somebody went to the liberty of doing this, quoting it. Let me see here, because this is even funnier in my opinion. No, view quotes. This is all happening in real time. My guy Matt Speck here. What do you think about that?
I like it. I gotta say that if Mike Tomlin was Brandon Aiyuk's size, how good of a wide receiver would he have been? Because Mike's not a big guy.
Right.
He was 6 foot.
Brandon's.
How long would he have played in the league? He would not have been the youngest. He would not have been the youngest player or the youngest head coach in NFL history to win a Super Bowl. He might have still been playing if he had that body type.
Absolutely. And then so today, Pony puts out there about, hearing that the Steelers were interested in Brandon Aiyuk. Now, to what level? Again, that could just be making as simple as making a phone call, like we had heard about Deebo Samuel. And likely that took place at the same time, right? Like if you're calling about them, asking about availability, just making that initial contact with the team, they probably asked about both of them, right?
I mean, you ask about everybody, right? I mean, that's just sort of the GM's job, is to know who's out there that's available, and of who's out there that's available, who might be, what the price might be on all of them. It is not new. As I always say, when you get to near the NHL trade deadline and people will tweet oh, so-and-so has scouts at the game tonight. I'm like, no kidding.
Yeah.
The scouts are watching the game. Oh, this is breaking news. Scouts watch games. Unbelievable. Incredibly, general managers find out how much players that might be available will cost. All of them, every single one, pretty much. I mean, you're just doing there. It does not mean anything other than Omar Khan is capable of doing his job. It doesn't mean that there's, like we talked about with Justin Fields, right? The Steelers called, they checked in, they exchanged some prices. The Bears said, we're looking for A. The Steelers said, we're more like it maybe G. If you happen to get to G, give us a call back. Lo and behold, eventually the Bears did. But, that doesn't, just because they checked in on the price of Brandon Aiyuk doesn't mean anything. Mm-hmm. But, obviously the Steelers need a wide receiver. They traded Deontay Johnson. They already needed a wide receiver before they did that. It is near the top of their needs. I don't know if I would put it at number one, just because I don't know how they get the ball snapped right now, but it's up there, right?
Okay, that makes sense too. I thought you were going to say just because of like the scheme itself too. Like obviously wide receivers are important.
Given
but
this
like,
offense, you can run this offense without a wide receiver a lot better than you can run it without a center. Like that's true of every offense, but very specifically this one, you could get by without your second wide receiver being of the kind of like. Do I think they need a Brandon Aiyuk to run this offense at its full potential? No. I think George Pickens and someone 50% that good could be fine for the wide receiver position, given how much I think they're probably going to throw the ball.
Yeah. So specifically with Brandon Aiyuk, though, he has not posted before today in 11 months since the weekend of the NFL draft last year. But he hopped on X today to post. I almost want to say tweet, and sometimes I'm just going to let it fly and say tweet at Mike Tomlin saying that they look like twins. So obviously he has come across that picture, and he also put the signature eye emoji in that. So now we're really rolling, Alan. You got the fan base going, everybody's quoting it, everybody's on board. You got the Pat McAfee show talking about it. You got ESPN posting the side by sides of the post along with the picture of the two of them. You got it all rolling now, Alan, to the point where I think this is the fan base is now locked in on this guy as the trade candidate for the Pittsburgh Steelers.
Yeah, and I mean, look, so I don't know what the ask is right now, but it's been reported that the ask for the Jacksonville Jaguars was a first round pick and Zay Jones. And I'm looking at where. So I mean, that's
17.
That's significant. That's a bigger draft pick than the Steelers have, and a better receiver to trade back than the Steelers have. So, I don't know how you would make an equivalent of that offer from the Steelers. It'd be the first and second, right? I mean, is Zay Jones worth a second round pick? Maybe not. Maybe first and one of the thirds.
I almost felt like Zay Jones is an okay player, but I almost felt like, I don't want to say it was doing them a favor, but it's offsetting some of the salary that you're paying to Brandon Aiyuk too. So I almost looked at it that way.
Zay Jones has a $10 million cap hit this year, but I don't know how much of it is guaranteed. Okay, not that much. So he does have some fungibility there. So it would be like a $2.9 million dead cap hit for Jacksonville. Plus they have to pay Aiyuk, and then 7.73 of Jones's salary would go with him. So maybe Jones isn't a big asset. Still would be more than the Steelers' first round pick. I think that's clear, right?
Yeah. Mark Caboli put out a first round pick in Calvin Austin, and I was like, that doesn't if the ask was 17 and Zay Jones, and how what value does Calvin Austin add to that trade?
Doesn't have many. I think a first and one of the thirds, or maybe a first and a 2025 third would probably be about as good as you could get here. To get close to the same value. Not saying that the ask is still the same. Obviously Jacksonville turned that trade down. And so generally what happens is when you don't get what you're looking for, you start to aim a little bit lower. But I'm just saying, just to replicate the value that was being sought in the trade we have the reported details of, you're looking at maybe like a first and a third, I would say, from the Steelers. And I just don't see. I mean, this team needs 4 starters right now. It needs a wide receiver, it needs a tackle, it needs a center, and it needs a corner. Right? Yeah. I mean, that it really needs 2 wide receivers, but could probably let one of those slide. They have 4 first and second day draft picks. You can't really start using 2 of those on one thing. They also don't even have anywhere near the amount of cap space that Brandon Aiyuk would want to sign him. Now they can make it, but I just think you're using an awful lot of the available bullets you have to fire in one place here by making a move like this. And if I'm being honest, 3 of those 4 positions I named are on offense. This is the one that is the least important for the offense they're trying to run.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I'm absolutely not going to disagree with that. That's what I said. When I didn't know where you were going with the wide receiver center talk, you saying there's not a guy to snap the ball. I just thought you were saying it's really hard to like get this point across to people, or like my opinion across to people when it comes to the wide receivers in this offense, because it sounds stupid to say that they're not important, but like as little of importance as they could be to an NFL offense, basically, is the way that I view a wide receiver two in Arthur Smith's offense.
Especially given the fact that they already have George Pickens. If they did not already have that one guy and just be the deep ball shot play guy, then I would say getting one of those would be important. But the thing they're going to do when they throw the ball, like half the time, is run play action deep shot go balls. And they already have the guy to do that. You know, I mean, the number one characteristic the Steelers should be looking for in a wide receiver too is blocking, probably, because George isn't very good at it. We know he's going to play. So, like, I don't know. Like, I'm with you. I just think this seems crazy to me. Now, maybe the price comes way down. We call him the con artist, right? Like, maybe he gets him for a steal. Maybe.
Yeah. I was wondering if there could be like a pick swap at some point, like along with the first, say it is a first. I was wondering if maybe like a pick swap and like 2 or 3 could do it.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, you could go down to the 40. You could trade firsts and move down 11 spots. I think I would probably make that trade. I think that trade seems to start to be reasonable to me. Swap first round picks. The Steelers would still get a 5th-year option on who they take. They would still be in the mix.
Is that enough though?
One of the top. I don't know. It's not enough compared to what the Jaguars turned down. Might it eventually become enough? You know, maybe. We'll see.
What if it took swapping first and seconds?
Oh, man, that's steep. I don't know. It also depends. Like, I'm not sure how committed the 49ers are to trading him either. You know,
no, I think they'd rather trade Debo, but Aiyuk is the one that's kind of voiced his displeasure more going back to the end of last
but
season.
Are they definitely like married to trading one of them? Or is it this one of those where, like, hey, if we don't get the deal we're looking for, we'll just punt and figure it out? You know, I don't know how dire their salary cap situation is. You know, you can look
pretty good number 3 in Juan Jennings too, that they tendered a 2nd round offer to.
It would be it would be very spicy if the Steelers if you really wanted to put the screws to the 49ers and get your point across, it would be to go tender Juwan Jennings a contract in the middle of this. If you really want to be aggressive and like try to drive the price down, that would be an interesting way to do it. I actually think Juwan Jennings might be
he's an awesome fit.
More along the lines of what the Steelers need in terms of not just his skill set, but what he's gonna, what he's gonna demand in the market. Like, if I was the Steelers and I could get Brandon Aiyuk for a first, something else, and pay him $24 million a year, or I could just tender Juwan Jennings, I think I would rather do that. Like, I think that's a better deal for the Steelers.
Yeah, I mean, looking at so we can have the discussion all day about like what we think they should do, but very clearly here it seems like they're casting a relatively wide net at the position. So like if they were to make a deal like that, I just got to have faith in the front office that they think it can work. You know, you look at the salary cap, they expect it to obviously continue to go up. Cam Hayward comes off the books, so like how similarly would it just be to like dropping Ayuk's contract in there for the Cam Hayward coming off the books? After this upcoming season, I don't know, but like I'm just more so intrigued by the whole process of it, by everybody that's name is kind of being thrown into this mix. Now, again, some of that is just preliminary discussion, but we do have Mike Williams coming in potentially for a visit this week. Obviously Tyler Boyd ties have been made. The Niners receivers, I'm still trying to find out if a name that I've heard is of interest. I heard from one person. I'm trying to get a second person to confirm whether they're interested in this guy. So I'm not gonna put that out there yet, but I'm just interested by the wide net that Josh Reynolds as well, who I think would be a good fit too. Like, I don't know where you're at with this, but I'm just super intrigued to see how it plays out because of how many names we've heard linked.
Yeah, it sure seems like they're going to get something done with one of these receivers. And it's interesting too, because they're kind of all over the map in terms of like Tyler Boyd's a slot guy. Mike Williams is even bigger than George Pickens and is like a strictly outside guy. Aiyuk, not that big, but plays bigger than he is, I guess, is probably the way I would say. And it has also been an outside guy, but again, he's had Deebo Samuel inside of him. So like, I don't want to say that Brandon Aiyuk couldn't be like a big slot either. That's the other part about this trade is that like I have people in my mentions saying like he's a top 15 wide receiver in the NFL. I'm like, is he, or does he just play in the best offense? Like I think that's a really hard thing to like. I mean, he was a late first round pick. Like he was not considered to be this like superstar player coming out of Arizona State where he was this can't miss guy. And his first couple of years were promising, but it's not like he was just overwhelmingly like awesome and unstoppable from the start. Obviously had a really good season last. I just think it's fair to wonder how much of that is the offensive environment that he's in compared to his specific talents and abilities and what he will look like in a different team.
I've like completely done a turn on Brandon Aiyuk because when he first came into the league, like you said, like I thought he struggled out of the gate originally, honestly.
Yeah,
first off, I didn't really care for him.
Great.
Yeah, I didn't care for him as a prospect, and then he didn't start out well. Last couple seasons, I've really been intrigued by what I've seen, and honestly, more so than the production, I think he's kind of like an analytics darling. Like similarly to Deontay, the underlying stuff in terms of the route running, the separation, those are always like in the upper echelon of the league. So I think that he's one of those guys that maybe like the surface level numbers don't match what people think that he actually is in terms of his talent.
Yeah, I love the way he approaches the game, maybe compared to Deontay.
Oh, and he loves the block. So
he seems like a guy that's going to be like give it all every down, and he's not afraid to get his nose dirty. He seems like is certainly like a better team player at a position that maybe is not necessarily known for having them.
Yeah.
I don't know. I really will. He gets 105 targets last year and 114 the year before as, I mean, probably the second best receiver San Francisco has. And like, what does that look like with Arthur Smith in Pittsburgh? Not just in terms of the decline in targets, because it's not going to be that, but in terms of a different scheme that is not necessarily built to maximize spacing and passing concepts and the things that have made Brandon Aiyuk good.
Yeah, I mean that's obviously a great question. We don't know like what the fit is going to be. They better feel very confident if this is the guy that they're going to go out and get and pay this money to, that he is going to be a seamless fit here and that he is that guy. Because you mentioned George Pickens, like if everything goes well, if he keeps his head on straight, like he's going to be looking for an extension in the very near future too. Like, are they going to pay two guys, $20+ million at the position? So I don't know. I'm intrigued again by all that. I'll use that word again. But we mentioned the scheme fit that it could be. And Alan, before this Brandon Aiyuk stuff really even came onto the radar here this afternoon, you texted me this morning that our guy Thomas Brocious, the ball knower, the ultimate ball knower from our YouTube comments, had something for us. Really good topic of discussion here, I thought, and he's always good for this stuff. But first off, I love the fact that he brought a spring cleaning reference into this. Does the spring cleaning continue? If you could think of 4 tradable players who awkwardly fit the scheme, who would you come up with? Freiermuth, Leal? Do you agree? Who else might be better in a different scheme than the ones that the Steelers use?
So before this comment came in, maybe minutes before this comment came in, I've been working on a story where I'm kind of going through the Steelers needs from this offseason, what they've addressed, what they haven't addressed, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. I'm sitting there looking at defensive line, right? And, they lost Armon Watts. They've not signed anyone to replace him. And I'm kind of going through the thought process like, oh, well, okay, could they just decide they want to move everybody up a spot, right? Did they just say like, okay, Isaiah Loudermilk was pretty good down the stretch. He could be the number 5 guy. They have the top 4 back, obviously, in Cam, Larry, Keanu Benton, and Montravius Adams. And do they just roll with, is that plausible, right? Could they just roll with, Isaiah Loudermilk and Leal and then Braden Fehoko as the sort of last guy in that room? And I'm just looking at him like, man, does DeMarvin Leal even have like a space on this team? Like, does he, like, he just doesn't seem to fit what they're trying to do. He never did. He never seemed to fit what they're trying to do on defense very well. He's just, he's like the Lego man playing with the GI Joes. Like he just does. He just sticks out. Like he doesn't belong here. And I don't know what they like. They absolutely could trade him. I don't know what his value would be at
Yeah,
this
right.
point. But like I could totally see them finding just a happy landing spot for him to move on, because that's clearly been a failed experiment.
They could get another a third 2025 conditional seventh or something from somebody like they did with
Well,
just
they don't
get
have
all
that.
the 20.
They don't have that sixth now. If they trade the sixth from Kendrick Green to Chicago, they would not have a sixth. So they could get their 2025 sixth, or maybe they fill that spot in the 5th round or the 7th round this year that they don't have. I don't know. I think it's possible that they could try to flip Lee out for something and then go back into the draft. Another piece of news that trickled out today: Christian Boyd, the defensive tackle from Northern Iowa, that our guy Nick Farabaugh was drooling over at the East-West Shrine Bowl, was reported by Tony Pauline today that the Steelers are bringing him in for one of their 30 pre-draft visits. He's a guy that I think super fits what the Steelers like love about defensive linemen. He is a big boy, like 320, not that tall either, 6'2". He's just an immovable object in the middle, but he's got like a hot motor, even though he's just a big guy, not necessarily like long speed, but like just in terms of like hustle and agility. And I think he's a player the Steelers could really like in, say, the 4th or 5th round. I think he's very underrated. If you're doing your like PFF or whatever, like the mock draft simulators, he's always there until like the 6th or 7th round. I don't think that's going to be the way real life. 15 teams, according to Pauline, have scheduled pre-draft visits for him. If 15 teams are doing a pre-draft visit for you, you're not getting to the 6th round. I'm pretty sure about that. But I think he's a guy that, like, and he just seems to fit what they want to do so much more than Leal does, that I just think like something like that makes a lot of sense. What about you? And do you got any more? Like, obviously, I mean, we talked a lot about Freiermuth, I feel like, on this podcast, the idea of trading him, but do you got any more that come across your list there?
So 2 of the ones that I would have included, he said, I think Freiermuth's interesting, not because of the scheme necessarily, but because of the quarterback, like Russ's lack of middle of the field utilization. Cause like Derek made a video where like people were talking about right away, everybody was confused about how Pat Freiermuth would fit into this offense. But then you look and, there are a lot of different things that he could do with tight ends, specifically the sail concept that Freiermuth has already excelled at and Smith likes to use. So I don't know if that's necessarily one that I would say is a scheme thing or just a quarterback thing. 1 year left on his contract. Curious to see how that whole thing plays out, but we've mentioned his name before. You mentioned Loudermilk though in there too. Like I wonder about him, along with Leal, like if it is a decision between the two, and maybe this thing goes all the way up, isn't until spring, but like if it goes until camp, could we see maybe a trade during camp with a guy that they know isn't going to make the roster or something like that? The other one that I included after signing Elliott, I wonder about the status of DeMonte KZ. I'm not saying that they wouldn't keep 3 safeties, but if you're looking at the safety market right now and they feel like they could still add a third guy for a relatively cheap price compared to what they're paying KZ, would they maybe look to move on there as well? So that is the other name that I included.
Okay, I can get down with that. Yeah, I mean, Larry Ogunjobi, I think, is someone that would be interesting.
Didn't he just get his bonus, his roster bonus or something?
Roster bonus. And look, I mean, there was still like Jeremy Fowler reported that one of these roster bonuses got redone. Yeah, he reported like yesterday at 9 p.m. And that was a roster bonus that was supposed to be paid like Friday or Saturday. So, like, so this is some inside football stuff that isn't necessarily at the top of everyone's radar. Like, what day the Steelers cut the check to Larry Ogunjobi. But he had a $4.75 million roster bonus that was due on Saturday. If it got paid, I think then he kind of becomes I don't know though, like it would be a painful trade for the Steelers at that point, right? Now you're talking about over $8 million in dead cap hit if they did trade him, but it would still save them 5. I just don't know how you get a better defensive tackle.
All I'm saying is San Francisco lost Armstead and Kinlaw in the free agency.
Larry Ogunjobi and a second for Brandon Aiyuk. Okay. I could be down with that. We're just creating a hole just as big as the hole. It's like it's like a whole, the only reason they're talking wide receivers is 'cause they traded Deontay Johnson for Dante Jackson. You would then just need to be talking to defensive tackles because you traded Larry Ogunjobi for Brandon Aiyuk. Now, I think you're getting the best player in the exchange if you end up trading that way. That would be interesting. But yeah, I mean, I just don't know. I don't know how you get better with $5 million in cap space after trading Larry Ogunjobi. Like, you can't get a.
Do you think it would have to be so similarly to the Dante Jackson, Deontay Johnson situation, where like they each were taking on a bonus that was due that same week? So would they maybe be looking to trade with a team with another player, like with a player that's already gotten their roster bonus from that team to kind of like make it even out?
Yeah, you could find somebody in a similar circumstance and maybe a player for player trade. But again, I just don't know how you backfill defensive tackle unless they're going to draft like Braden 50 in the second round. I mean, I don't know where they get another defensive lineman that they feel good about playing this year, or they would feel better about playing this year than Larry Ogunjobi. So I'm a little out on that idea, even though I think coming into this offseason, that was probably one that I would consider. Man, it's tough because they don't have a lot of obvious options here. Dan Moore, like if they draft a tackle in the first round, I guess could be an option to be traded. I don't know what they would get for him.
I think you got to keep him though. Like
it would have to be like an interesting, like, I don't know. Like, they would have to get one of these. Like, it couldn't be Mims or Guyton, right? It would have to be one of these upper level tackles that fell to them, like Latham. If they draft Latham, he's a day one starter. Like, you could just put him in there, move Broderick Jones, and be done with it. I think that's what it would take. Like, they would have to draft someone that appears to be so good that they are willing to move Broderick Jones to left tackle right away, like for OTA.
Probably feel
2 weeks.
And probably feel relatively decent about like Dylan Cook behind them, right? Like, I mean, because you need 3 tackles.
You can find a swing tackle for not that much money. Although Dan, that's the other part, is that Dan doesn't actually make that much either. And so that's one of the reasons why keeping him is beneficial. But if you think you could get something significant for him, maybe you can trade him. I don't know, man. They're pretty well picked over. Like, there are not a lot of other options in terms of like trying to find ways to either create salary cap space.
I was going through the roster and I was
finding dead weight. Like, it's a pretty lean roster right now. There's not a lot going on.
Oh,
guys that you just don't want to have.
Mike Williams signed with the Jets.
Wow. Okay. Well, there's one off the board. Not really surprised. But
1 year up to 15 million.
1 year up to 15.
That's up to. I don't know what the
I mean, we'll have to wait and see what the actual payout is, but up to, that's a lot. Like, I can't imagine the Steelers were going to offer any more than that.
No. Does this, in your mind, this is all happening in real time, by the way, as you guys can tell, so it's like, but does this in your mind maybe speed up the urgency for something else now that Mike Williams is off the board?
Maybe Tyler Boyd. I don't know.
Yeah.
Or maybe Brandon Aiyuk. I don't know. Like, they're very different players, so it's hard to like sort of wait. You know what I mean? Like, they're not the same, and so I don't know what if they trade what the Jaguars are asking for, or what the Jaguars were asked for Aiyuk. I think that's a pretty big mistake. But if they can get him for less than that, I mean, he's a really good player. There's no question about that. I still think I would probably rather have Tyler Boyd, as long as that's the other thing too, is like, where's the hesitation there? Like, that hasn't really been well reported. My understanding is the Steelers have made an offer, that there's a contract out there. I would assume that means that the reason it hasn't been returned with a signature is either years or dollars, right? It's got to be one or the other. I know Tyler's,
well, the Jets were also a suitor for Tyler. So like, I'm curious, that changes, that takes them out. So are the
right.
Chiefs
Now,
still
the
in
Chiefs
after
were
Hollywood?
supposedly in the mix too, and I don't know if they
Yeah.
still are after they got Hollywood Brown or not. You know, it could be very similar to the way it ended up with Justin Fields, where the Steelers are the last team, left, holding out their hand. It's very interesting, right? That the way we talk about these, like the free agent deals and the way that the hard cap changes the marketplace, where like, it like compared to baseball, right? Where we very easily criticize the Pirates for like waiting around to see who you can get cheap at the end, which they just did with their most recent signings. It's like, no, in the NFL, that's what you want to do. Like, you don't want to be the first team out there setting the market with the top free agent contract. Those very, very rarely work out for the team making them. You're better off being the team that finds the guy at the end who didn't have a dance partner and you get them for nothing. Like that's way better in NFL, as long as you can draft well enough to get your own stars and you don't need to find them elsewhere. If you're looking through free agency or the trade for to fill in the holes in your roster, you're way better off doing it with the guys at the end of the free agent process than you are the guys at the beginning.
Yeah, free agency I mean, we just saw that how Omar, approached the whole Justin Fields situation and how they came out on the other side of that for their patience. So,
yeah. So I wouldn't. Now center, on the other hand, I don't know where they're going with that level of patience, but Mongo's gone. John Feliciano signed today, I believe, with the what do you do? Sign where? I don't remember. Back with the 49ers, I think. Yeah, I think back with the 49ers. So, yeah.
Okay, yeah.
So, yeah. So we're actually, it looked like that happened a day or two ago. I just saw that the OTC.
Yeah, well, they might have became official today. Today,
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Like actually signed, like similarly to the Steelers just officially signed Cam Johnston and Montravius Adams while we were recording this, but we knew that days ago. So, but yeah, I'm with you, man. It's like Brian Allen or what are we doing at center in free agency? So I don't know. All right. Well, great discussion as always. And we want to know what you guys think about it in the comments. Alan, tell the people where they can find you.
Yeah, leave a comment if you've got some Steelers spring cleaning, some trade out options that you think you see we missed. Let us know, and we'll see what you guys come up with. Other than that, @Saunders_PGH on Twitter, Instagram, wherever. SteelersNow.com, PGH Steelers Now sites account, and all kinds of good stuff still going up there on the site. Go check it out.
Also, if you are watching or listening to this, Carol, I know Alan saw the cookies. I also saw the cookies. We need some of those, so please send those our way via an afternoon drive.
Offered to bring them to training camp. So
I saw a picture last year of Wes eating one. I think it was Wes.
There may be a Steelers afternoon drive episode from St. Vincent College with me standing on the softball field eating Carol's cookies while you just break things and rage over there.
Can that be? Can she? I mean, there doesn't have to be anything else exchanged besides cookies, but like an unofficial sponsor, maybe at least for that episode.
Yeah,
Carol's Cookies.
Sure,
I mean, Carol's Cookies, super easy name.
We'll get Brandon to do intro at Alan, Nick, and Carol's Cookies like that. Or whatever, whoever's on that day. We can make it special.
Love to hear it. Okay, like, subscribe, hit us in the comments, of course, hit that notification bell so you don't miss a new episode of this or any of the other content that goes up on the channel. Leave us a 5-star review, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcast from. For Alan Saunders and myself, thanks for jumping in, taking another ride on the Steelers afternoon drive.